शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Namaskaram all of you and welcome to the 27th session of Narayaniya. We have so far seen Bhagavat Mahima, Bhakta Lakshanam, cosmic evolution, variety of creation, Varaha Avatara and Hiranyaksha Samharam. Kapila Avatara and Kapila Gita followed all of them. And finally, Nara-Narayana Avatara, and lastly, Daksha Yajnam and the consequences of it. We will now see Dhruva-Caritam today as from Narayana Bhattadiri in his 17th Dasakam or 17th chapter of Narayaniyam. Swayambhu Manu had from Satarupa 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti and Prasuti. Bhagavan incarnated as Yajnamurti in the eldest, namely Akuti, as Kapila Vasudeva through Devahuti, and as Nara and Narayana in Murti, one of the 13 daughters of Prasuti. After having described the lineage of Manu's daughters in the earlier chapters, Narayana Bhattadiri begins to relate about the families of Manu's sons. Dhruva, the child devotee, is the most important among them. In order to relate Dhruva's story, Bhattadiri begins with that of his father, King Uttanapada, son of Swayambhu Manu. Dhruva-Caritam, or the story of Dhruva, is covered by chapters 8, 9 and 10 of Canto 4 or Book 4 in Srimad Bhagavata Mahapuranam. Uttanapada nrupade manunandanasya Uttanapada nrupade manunandanasya jaya bhabuva suruchihi nitaramavita Uttanapada nrupader manunandanasya jaya bhabuva suruchihi nitaramavita anya sunitiriti bhartuhu anadritasa Tvameva nityamagati sharanam gadabhur. Uttanapada nrupater manunandanasya jaya bhabuva suruchihi nitaram abhishta Anya sunitiriti bhartuhu anadhyatasa Tvameva nityamagatihi sharanam gadabhur. Swayambhu Manuவின் புதல்வரான உத்தானபாத மன்னனுக்கு சுருச்சி என்கிற அவருடைய இளைய மனைவியின் மீது மிகவும் அழகியாக இருந்தால் என்பதனாலும் கண்மூடித்தனமான ஒரு ஆசை. அதனால் அந்த அளவுக்கு அழகில்லாத சுனீதி என்கிற மூத்த மனைவியை அவர் கவனிக்காமலும் அதிகமாக ஆதரிக்காமலும் இருந்தார். வேறு கதியில்லாத சுனீதியோ எப்பொழுதும் தங்களையே பரிபூர்ணமாக சரணமடைந்து தங்கள் புகழை பாடிக்கொண்டு தங்கள் புகழை கேட்டுக்கொண்டு வாழ்ந்து கொண்டிருந்தார். ஓ குருவாயூரப்பா என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. Swayambhu Manu had two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada. Uttanapada, the younger one, had two wives, Suniti and Suruchi. The younger wife, Suruchi, was exceedingly beautiful. Attracted by her physical beauty and charm, the henpecked king Uttanapada became completely under her control. Suniti was not endowed with physical beauty, as was her co-wife. However, she was the embodiment of virtues like patience, humility, and very good conduct, which only emanate from a good heart. But the king was completely indifferent to her. What recourse is there for the virtuous and chaste woman in this world, O Guruvayurappa, accepting their partner or husband's love and attention? In the circumstances, Suniti became helpless. This is what Bhattadri says. This is not my statements. The virtuous soul that she was, Suniti took complete refuge in you, Bhagavani, the Lord of the universe, and prayed to you, assuming that the deprivation of her husband's love could be due to some great sins that she might have committed in earlier births. In today's world, such a thinking itself will be abhorrent and people will criticize for that. But that is belonging to the times. Anke pidugo suruchi putragam uttamam tam drishtva Dhruva-Caritam suniti sudo adirokshan. Anke pidugo suruchi putragam uttamam tam drishtva Dhruva-Caritam suniti sudo adirokshan. Achikshipe kila shishubu sutaram surucha dusyantaja kalu bhavat vimukai asuya dusyantyaja kalu bhavat vimukai rasuya. Anke piduhu suruchi putrakam uttamam tam drishtva Dhruva-Caritam suniti sudo adirokshayan. Achikshipe kila shishuhu sutaram suruchya dusyantaja kalu bhavat vimukair asuya. தனது தந்தையின் மடியில் சுருச்சியின் புதல்வனான உத்தமன் வீற்றிருப்பதை பார்த்து சுனீதியின் மகனான துருவனும் தகப்பனாரது மடியில் ஏற முயற்சித்த போது சுருச்சியால் மிகவும் கடுமையாக அதட்டி தடுக்கப்பட்டான் அல்லவா. தங்களிடம் பக்தியற்றவர்களால் பொறாமை எனும் குணம் எத்தனைதான் முயற்சி செய்தாலும் எவ்வளவு சிரமப்பட்ட போதிலும் அத்தகைய குணத்தை விட முடியவில்லையே குருவாயூரப்பா என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. Suruchi not only admonished him, abused the innocent boy severely, sheerly out of jealousy. And she couldn't tolerate Dhruva actually claiming equality with her own son. There is nothing surprising in this, Bhattadri says, as those who have no devotion to you, Bhagavani, they cannot get rid of such evil qualities inside them. Not only was Suruchi not devoted to you, but she could not even tolerate anything good happening to your own devotee, Suniti, or to her son. It is also hinted here that because of censuring a devotee, which is equal to censuring Bhagavan himself, Suruchi had to suffer the pain of losing her son later in the same Purana, while the devotee Suniti, by the very sheer grace of Bhagavan, attained progressively very great stature and finally an everlasting place in Dhruva-loka as the mother of great Dhruva. Tvanmahite bidari pashyati dharavashye दूरं दुरुक्तिनिहतः सगतो निजाम्बां सापि स्वकर्मगति सन्तरणाय पुंसां त्वत्पादमेव शरणं शिशवे शशंस. त्वन्मोहिते पितरि पश्यति दारवस्ये दूरं दुरुक्ति निगतः सगतो निजाम्बां सापि स्वकर्मगति சந்தரணாய பும்சாம் त्वत्पादमेव शरणं शिशवे शशंस. தங்களது மாயையால் மதிமயங்கி மனைவிக்கு வசப்பட்ட தந்தையான உத்தானபாதன் அவன் கண்ணெதிரே பார்த்து கொண்டிருக்கையிலேயே தன்னுடைய சிற்றன்னையின் கடுஞ்சொற்களால் மிகவும் புண்படுத்தப்பட்ட துருவன் தன் தாயிடம் புகலிடமாக சென்றான். சுனீதியும் மனிதர்களுக்கு அவரவர் கர்மவினையை போக்கிக் கொள்வதற்கு ஒரே உபாயம் மகனே, பகவானுடைய திருவடி தாமரைகளே, அவைதான் புகலிடம், வேறு எதுவும் வழி கிடையாது என்று தன் குழந்தைக்கு ஹிதோபதேசம் செய்தாள். பொறாமையாலோ புச்சரிப்பாலோ எந்த விதத்திலும் அவள் தவறான சொற்களை பயன்படுத்தவில்லை. அதற்கு மாறாக அந்த சின்ன குழந்தைக்கு கர்ம வினையை போக்குவதற்கு ஒரே மார்க்கம் பகவானுடைய திருவடி என்று சொல்கிறார். ஓ பகவானே, Suruchi severely reprimanded Dhruva when he tried to climb on to father's lap. At that very moment, the king ought to have chastised his wife, but he kept quiet. It was not because the king lacked discrimination and fairness, but the power of destiny had to take its own course. However learned a man may be, he cannot prevent the course of destiny. The mind acts only in conformity with the destiny. Accordingly, King Uttanapada's mind came under the deluding influence of your Maya in the form of a woman, Suruchi. Henpecked that he was, Uttanapada could not utter a word out of fear of the bad-tempered, though exceedingly charming Suruchi, who swayed him according to her wishes. Dhruva quickly withdrew, hastened to his mother. He related the entire episode to his mother with a deep anguish. But Suniti advised him that the only recourse for all such human beings, especially to get relief from misfortunes emanating from their own past karma, was to seek shelter at Bhagavan's feet, and there is no other upaya. In other words, bhakti to you or devotion to you is the only way to cross the ocean of consequences of one's own past karma. This is a repeat statement by all great people. The sum and substance of Suniti's advice is that to get rid of all sins and all actions that affect us, and to attain desired success in our lives and for our own well-being, one should completely surrender to Bhagavan, and there is no other marga left. Tata manurvo Bhagavan pitamahoyam yekamatya puru dakshinirmakaihi. Tata manurvo Bhagavan pitamahoyam yekamatya puru dakshinirmakaihi. Itta vibede duravapamanyato bhaumam sukam divyam atapavagyam. Atapavagyam. Itta vibede duravapamanyato bhaumam sukam divyam atapavagyam. तथा मनुर्वो भगवान पितामहो यम एकमत्या पुरु दक्षिणैर्मकैः इष्टाभिभेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो भौमं सुखं दिव्यम अत अपवर्ग्यम. This is Bhagavata slokam from Canto 4, Chapter 8. Suniti tells her son, your grandfather Swayambhuva Manu executed great sacrifices with the distribution of charity, and thereby with unflinching faith and devotion he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Brahman, the Parabrahman. By acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness and, of course, afterwards achieved Sayujya, liberation and Sayujya, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the Itara Devadas or other demigods. Ekamatya, the word used here, is concentrating on Bhagavan without any distraction or deviation. Let us also see what Bhagavad Gita says about this impossible to achieve, namely Ananya Bhak. What is Ananya Bhak? That which is impossible to obtain from any other source. Let's see the slokam. Abhichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavyaha samyak vyavasito hisaha. Apiched suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavyaha samyak vyavasito hi saha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he or she is engaged in devotional service or bhakti, such a person is to be considered saintly because such a person properly situated in his or her determination. They should not be construed to give you the indirect sanction to commit such abominable acts. This goes to prove that any inadvertent action which is deemed abominable or accidental is pardoned because of the determination in bhakti or devotional service. We all went through the Margazhi Masam and the famous saying of Andal and Thirupavai, Poya Pizhayum Pugudaruvan Nindranavum. All the sins that were committed in the past, as well as those that may get committed in the future, will all be just destroyed like dust in the fire by the divine grace. That again does not mean that people can continue to commit sins knowingly. Only those which are committed without their knowing such sins or having committed those are the only one which can be redeemed by the Supreme Brahman out of his compassion and love, not otherwise. For all the papam done deliberately and knowingly, since the intent is very clear, the punishments have to be gone through. Nahi sasakula satchabhihi kadachittimira parabhavatvam upeiti Chandra Bhagavati Jaharavananyacheta Vrishamalinobi Virajate Manushya. Nahi sasa kulasas chabihi kadachit timira parabhavatvam upaiti Chandraha Bhagavati Jaharavananya Cheta Vrishamalinobi Virajate Manushya. Drisama Purana is one of the 18 Upa Puranas, not the Mahapurana. The meaning is that even if one fully engaged in bhakti of Supreme or devotional service of the Supreme Lord, that person is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities purely by accident, not by deliberate intention. These activities should be considered to be like the spots that resemble the mark of a rabbit on the moon, because there is usually a misnomer. The kalanka on moon, when you see for the naked eye, spots look there. But the spots only enhance the beauty. The spots are not going to diminish the greatness or the power of the moon. Such spots do not become an impediment to the rays emitting from the moon or diffusion of moonlight per se. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a bhakta from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. Bhagavati cha haram ananya cheta vrishamalinopi virajate manushyaha. Akarnya sopi bhavadarshana nishchitatma आकर्ण्यसोऽपि भवदर्शन निशितात्मा मानी निरेत्य नगरात् किल पञ्चवर्षः मानी निरेत्य नगरात् किल पञ्चवर्षः सन्दृष्ट नारद निवेदित मन्त्रमार्गः त्वामारराध तपसा मधुकाननान्ते त्वम् आरराध तपसा मधुकाननान्ते. आकर्ण्यसोऽपि भवदर्शन निश्चितात्मा मानी निरेद्य नगरात् किल पञ्चवर्षः सन्दृष्ट नारद निवेदित मन्त्रमार्गः त्वाम् आरराध तपसा मधुकाननान्ते. தாயார் சொன்னதை கேட்டு 5 வயது பாலகனாக இருந்தாலும் சிற்றன்னையின் கொடிய சொற்களை செவிமடுத்த பின்னரும் அமைதியாக, ஆனால் அவமானம் தாங்காமல் அந்த துருவன் தங்களை ஆராதனை செய்ய வேண்டும் என்ற மன உறுதி பூண்டு நகரத்திலிருந்து வெளியேறி வரும் வழியில் நாரதரை சந்தித்து அவரால் மந்திரம் மற்றும் உபாசனை முதலியனவற்றை உபதேசிக்க பெற்று மதுவனத்திலேயே தங்களை கடும் தவத்தினால் ஆராதனை செய்தான். Dhruva was just 5 years old when the above described incident took place in his life, but he was extremely sensitive and self-respecting. He could not reconcile with the harsh words of Suruchi, given his age. However, Dhruva consoled his distressed mother. He was more worried about his mother being distressed, given all that has happened, than his own disappointment. And Dhruva left the city straight for the forest, totally determined to devote himself to the worship of Bhagavan, so that Bhagavan will appear in front of him. That was his steadfast devotion, that if he prays to him sincerely, the Lord Supreme will come in front of him. On the way, Dhruva had an accidental but providential meeting with sage Narada. The sage was immensely pleased to find the rock-like mental firmness and determination of the young boy, and therefore instructed him in the procedures of worship, namely Yama, control of the body, Niyama, control of the mind, Asana, posture of sitting, Pranayama, control of breath, Pratyahara, withdrawing the organs from external influences that distract us, and Dharana, keeping the mind completely collected and steady, Dhyana, meditation, and Samadhi, perfect absorption of thought into the Supreme Spirit. Narada teaches Dhruva all these things, which are an important step towards realizing the goal, namely meeting the Lord Supreme. The sage also initiated him into the supremely divine and efficacious Dwadasakshari mantra, namely Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dwarakakshari mantra, the mantra with 12 syllables, are generally known as Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then Dhruva entered the well-known forest of Madhu and engaged himself in severe austerities in adoration of you with single-minded devotion. Dharmartha kama mokshakyam yaichet shreya atmanah. Dharmartha kama mokshakyam yaichet shreya atmanah. Eko eva hare tatra कारणं पादसेवनं एकं हि एव करे तत्र कारणं पादसेवनं. धर्मार्थ काम मोक्षाख्यम य इच्छेत चेय आत्मनः एकम हि एव हरेः तत्र कारणं पाद सेवनम. This is Srimad Bhagavatam again, Canto 4, Chapter 8. Narada says to Dhruva, Any person who desires the fruits of the four principles, namely Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and of course at the end liberation, should engage himself in the bhakti or the service, devotional service of Supreme Brahman for worship of his lotus feet yields the fulfillment of all of the above. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha vedavadarataha partha nanyat astiti vadinaha yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha vedavadarataha partha nanyat astiti vadinaha kama atmana swargapara janma karma balapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhoga aishwarya gatim prati kriya vishesha bahulam bhoga aishwarya gatim prati. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha vedavadarataha partha nanyat asti iti vadinaha. It is followed by the more profound slokam kamatmanaha swargapara janma karma phalapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhoga aishwarya gatim prati. Together, when we look at the meaning of these two slokas, those with limited understanding get attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which advocate ostentatious rituals for elevation to the celestial lokams or abodes and presume no higher principle is described in them. They glorify only those portions of the Vedas that please their senses. This is again not the fault of Vedas, but the people approach Vedas with that kind of an intent. These people perform pompous ritualistic ceremonies for attaining higher birth, higher than higher birth, opulence, sensual enjoyment, and elevation to the heavenly planets like the 14 lokas. But that exactly is not the intent of Vedas or ultimate essence of teaching. Thus, Narada reiterates to Dhruva, if your intent is just Narayana and nothing else, you will succeed by sheer practice of love, premabhyasa, and vairagya, and without your effort any further, Sriman Narayana will become your only goal. In this context, I am reminded of Patanjali Mahamuni, who says in the chapter 1, the 12th sutra, Abhyasa vairagya abhyam tan nirodha. It's a very famous sutra. The state of yoga is attained via a balance between assiduousness. Abhyasa is assiduousness. And what is vairagya? Imperturbability. Patanjali goes further in Sutra 15 of the same chapter. The one which we just now saw is Sutra 12. The 15th Sutra is equally important. Drishta anushravika vishaya utrushnasya vashikara samkshna vairagyam. Imperturbability results from a balance in the consciousness. And when the desire for all things that we see or have heard is extinguished, that is when you reach that state. Drushta is seen or visible. Anushravika is heard or heard of from others. Vishaya is entity, object or thing. Utrushnasya is he who lacks thirst. For your information, Utrushna is adipsy or lack of thirst, since Trushna is a desire or thirst. Vashikara in the sutra is balance. Balance, the same. Samkshna is consciously. Vairagyam is actually from Vairagya, imperturbability, indifference Even non-attachment can go with vairagyam. So, drishta anushravika vishaya vitrishnasya vashikara samkshna vairagyam is the famous Patanjali Sutra. When the mind loses all desire for objects seen or described in the scriptures, mind acquires a state of utter desireless state, which is called detachment, completely removed from everything else. Patanjali tells us all in another sutra, which is sandwiched between Sutra 12 and 15, Sadhu Dirgha Kala, Nairantarya Satkara, Adara Asevito, Drada Bhumihi. This is the 14th Sutra. Success can only be achieved by a sound and continuous practice over an extended period of time, conducted in a serious and thoughtful manner. Simply put, shortcuts, yoga of a very short time nature, and fidgety agitation do help yield the desired result of goal temporarily all right. Like Gandhari ending up with Kauravas, first as a ball of nothing but a meatball, and then ending up breaking them up into 100 pieces and ending up with the worst of anybody would love to have as sons. That all happens because shortcuts were achieved. Tate vishanna hridaye nagarim gatena shinaradena parisandvita chitta vrittau Balatvadarpitamanaha Kramavarditena Ninye Kadora Tapasa Kila Panjamasa. Tate Vishanna Hridayena Girim Gatena Srinaradena Parisantvita Chitta Vrittau Balastva Darpitamanaha Kramavarditena Ninye Katora Tapasa Kila Panchamasan. தன்னால் தனது இயலாமையால் தானே தன்னுடைய குழந்தை துருவன் காட்டிற்கு செல்ல நேரிட்டது, அதோடு கூட தவம் மேற்கொள்ள நேரிட்டது என்ற மனதை அரிக்கும் கவலை கொண்டிருந்த தந்தையே, வேண்டுமென்றே நகரத்துக்கு சென்ற ஸ்ரீ நாரதர் இப்படி சமாதானம் செய்தார் உத்தானபாதனிடம். பாலகனான துருவன் தங்களிடம் மனதை சமர்ப்பணம் செய்து படிப்படியாக வளர்ந்த கடுமையான தவத்தில் 5 மாதங்களை கழித்தான் அல்லவா, அது குறித்து நாரதர் உத்தானபாதனுக்கு சமாதானம் சொல்லுகிறார். O Lord, though the king Uttanapada did not utter a single word for fear of Suruchi, he was filled with extensive remorse when he learned about Dhruva's departure to the forest to do Aghora tapas. Uttanapada started worrying about the lurking dangers in the forest for a 5-year-old child. When he was thus worried and distressed at the consequences of his behavior, condemning himself on day in and day out, Sage Narada appeared before him, right into the palace to console him. The grief-stricken king related the incident to the sage, cursing himself for the serious offense he committed and caused Dhruva to force him to go to the forest to do such a penance, renouncing the comforts of the palace as a prince. Sage Narada consoled the king and said, "O king, you don't have to worry about Dhruva even a bit. The Lord of the 3 worlds, Sarveshwara, will protect him, and he is now protecting him. Your son will successfully complete the penance, which is difficult even for the Devas to comprehend. Your son Dhruva will also enhance your fame, attaining all that he desires, and he will be hallmark for the future." Meanwhile, Dhruva in the forest of Madhu practiced Yama, Niyama, chanting the Dwadasakshara mantra, the 12-syllable mantra, uninterruptedly. Dhruva withdrew his mind from everything, concentrated on your lotus feet, and did penance over a period of 5 months. Aghora tapas. Dhruva progressively intensified his penance over this period. It went to the highest point when Bhagavan himself could not handle it. The gradual increase in the intensity of penance is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, which I am going to summarize. In the first month, Dhruva ate fruits, only fruits, and that too once in 3 days. In the second month, Dhruva ate only once in 6 days, and this time it was not fruits. It was a dry grass and leaves that had fallen from the trees and that were going to be wasted. He did not pluck them. In the third month, Dhruva did penance, drinking only droplets of water. And that too, he did so once in 9 days, a few drops. In the fourth month, once in 12 days, he breathed. Even the breathing was controlled in such a manner that once in 12 days he breathed. During all these periods, Dhruva practiced pranayama with Rechaka and Puraka, exhalation and inhalation, respectively. In the fifth month, Dhruva left even breathing. He stopped breathing, stood still on one leg, and with absolutely single-minded devotion prayed to the Lord Supreme. Such was the intensity of his penance. This is narrated by Shuka to Parikshit in detail. That's been re-narrated later by Suta Puranika to all the sages who have assembled there. All these have been said by the author Bhattadri in one word, Kramavarditena. Bhattadri's one word of Kramavarditena can be described as what I just now said as the summary of several slokas from Sukha Bhagavatam. The great Bhagavan manifested himself before Dhruva as he desired to bestow the grace on him finally. He was waiting for that moment. And also because he was requested by the Devas who were seriously afraid and agitated by the intensity of Dhruva's austerities. The Devas and especially Indra, they are always worried whenever somebody does serious tapas to Bhagavan because they don't want their position to be usurped. That's all the material level of scare. This is described in the next sloka by Bhattadri in the sloka 6. Tavattapobala nirujvasite dighante devartitatvam udayat karuna ardcheta Dhruva-Caritam rasanileenamate purastat avirbhavuvita vivo garudadirudaga avirbhavuvita vivo garudadirudaga Tavat tapobala nirishvasite digande devartitasvam udayat karuna ardra chetaha tadrupachidrasa nileenamatehe purastad avirbhavuvida vivo garudhadi rudaha. Hey Guruvayirappa, Prabhuvana Guruvayirappa. அப்போது துருவன் மூச்சை அடக்கிச் செய்த மகா தபத்தின் வலிமையால் அனைத்து திக்கு திசைகளிலும் உள்ளவர்கள் அனைவருமே மூச்சு விட முடியாமல் திணறுகின்ற வேளை வரும்போது அனைத்து தேவர்களாலும் வேண்டிக் கொள்ளப்பட்டு பொங்கிய கருணையால் கனிந்த மனதனுடைய தாங்கள் தங்களுடைய ஞானானந்த சுரூபத்தில் லயித்திருந்த துருவனுடைய முன்னிலையில் கருடாரூடனாக காட்சி அளித்தீர்கள் அல்லவா? அப்படித்தானே அவன் உங்களை வேண்டினான் என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. தத்ரூபசித் ரச நிலீனமதே புரஸ்தாது ஆவிர்பபூவித விபோ கருடாதி ரூடஹா. Withdrawing his mind from everything, Dhruva meditated with unshakable devotion on your form, Guruvayirappa, which pervades the entire universe and is present in all movable and immovable beings. Day by day, the power of his austerities or tapas increased, and yogic powers like ability to increase or decrease one's own weight. Anima Siddhis. The 8 Siddhis, as you have already known, we talked about are Anima, Garima, etc. They began to shine in him. All the 5 elements came under his control. The entire universe trembled at the power of Dhruva's penance. Dhruva bound and enshrined the all-pervading form of Bhagavan in his heart. Because Bhagavana, you hold the entire universe of the 3 worlds in your kuchi or abdomen, The whole weight was on Dhruva, who was doing penance standing on one foot. Mother Earth was unable to bear that particular weight. Look at the logic here. Dhruva was standing on one foot and holding Bhagavan in his kuchi. And the weight of Bhagavan through Dhruva was pressing so hard on Mother Earth. And no living being was able to breathe because of that. The entire universe came to a standstill. At this, the Devas got frightened. They tried their best to obstruct Dhruva's penance. But all of their efforts, when they failed, they sought refuge in you, Bhagavane, to dissuade Dhruva. But by the time, O Karunamurti, you were already moved and overwhelmed with absolute compassion due to the sincere devotion and rock-like steadfastness of Dhruva in carrying out his wonderful mission. Immediately, you proceeded to the forest, Madhu, on your vehicle Garuda. At that time, Dhruva's mind had reached the peak of penance, a stage where he could perceive no difference between you and himself, where he became the Brahman himself and was immersed in Samadhi, enjoying the nectar of divine bliss of seeing you in his mental eye. Suddenly, as your form disappeared from his mind, Dhruva woke up from his Samadhi and opened his eyes, because the form was no longer there, because he himself felt that was Brahman per se in him. Dhruva ultimately saw inside as well as outside your manifestation before him, seated on Garuda with conch, discus, mace and lotus in your hands. Shankha Chakra Gadadhari, you appeared in front of him along with Garuda. O all-pervading Bhagavan, you have no difficulty in manifesting yourself in any form, anywhere, inside or outside, in the mind's eye or before the physical eyes of your Bhakta. May you of such nature, who revealed yourself to Dhruva, who did immense and intense penance to please you, be pleased to bestow the same grace on and reveal your charming and divine form to this humble one too, an ardent devotee of yours. This is Bhattadari's prayer in between the Dashakam. Tvadarshana pramadabharatarangitam Dhrivyam nimagnam iva ruparasayanete Tvadarshana pramadabharatarangitam Dhrivyam nimagnam iva ruparasayanete Tushtushamanam avagamya kapoladeshe Samprittavan asidarena tata adarena Samprittavan asidarena tata adarena. Tvadarshana pramadabharatarangitam tam Dhrivyam nimagnamiva ruparasayanete Tushtushamanam avagamya kapoladeshe Samsprittavan asidarena tata adarena. தங்களுடைய தர்சனத்தினால் உண்டான ஆனந்த அலைகள் உள்ளத்தில் பொங்கி எழவே உங்களுடைய திருமேனியாகிற அமிர்தத்தில் கண் வழியே பாய்ந்து முழுகிவிட்டவன் போலிருந்த அந்த சிறுவன் துருவன் தங்களை துதிக்க விரும்புவது என்பதை பூர்ணமாக அறிந்த தாங்கள் அவனுடைய கன்னத்தில் அன்புடனும் ஆதரவுடனும் நாதமயமான பாஞ்சஜன்யம் என்கிற சங்கால் தொட்டு அருளினீர்கள் அல்லவா. Bhattadari now here imagines Tushtushamanam avagamya kapola deshe samprittavanasi darena tata adarena. ஆதரவுடன் நீ கன்னத்தின் அந்த சங்கத்தினால் தொட்டாய் அல்லவா என்கிறார். ஓ பகவானே, Dhruva, who till then was in deep meditation, visualizing in his inner eye your divine form, was filled with the waves of delight and bliss when you physically manifested in front of him. It was as though his eyes were blinded by your splendor and glory. He was absorbing the nectar of Brahmananda, the bliss of absorption into the supreme Brahman, at the sight of you, the Supreme, with great devotion and love in his eyes. Dhruva just stood spellbound, gazing at your form. Though he felt an urge to sing your praise in your presence, he could not. He was choked. No words will come out because of the ecstasy of the Brahmananda, Paramananda bliss and his tender age was also one of the factors stopping him from any expression when he was in that ecstatic mood. Knowing your child devotee's mind, your natural love and compassion poured out. You became a mother then. You lovingly touched Dhruva's cheek with the Kanchi Panchajanya, from which had originated the primordial sound of Vedas. That was the reason for using the conch to touch him, thus bestowing on Dhruva all the divine knowledge that one can ever aspire in creation and the extensive scholarship which no one can actually contest. Tavat vibhodam vimalam pranuvantameno tavat vibhodam vimalam pranuvantameno abhashadatvam avagamya tadiya bhavam abhashadatvam avagamya tadiya bhavam Rajyam chiram samanubhuya bhajasva bhuya sarvottaram dhruvapadam vinivrittinam sarvottaram dhruvapadam vinivrittinam dhruvapadam vinivrittinam vinivrittinam. Tavat vibodha vimalam pranuvantamenam abhashatastvam avagamya tadiya bhavam rajyam chiram samanubhuya vajasva bhuyaha sarvottaram dhruvapadam vinivrittihinam. அப்போது அஞ்ஞானம் விலகி ஞானோதயம் உண்டாகி தங்களை மறுபடியும் துதிக்கின்ற துருவனை அவனுடைய எண்ணத்தை அறிந்த தாங்கள் குருவாயிரப்பா நீண்ட காலம் அரசுரிமையை நன்கு அனுபவித்து மறுபடியும் திரும்பி வருதல் இல்லாத அனைத்துக்கும் மேலான ஒரு துருவபதத்தை நீ அடைவாயாக என்று கூறினீர்கள். இது ஒரு உத்தமமான பதம் அல்லவா? துருவபதம். ராஜ்யம் சிரம் சமனுபூய பஜஸ்வபூயகா. You complete all your duties as a king. Sarvottaram Dhruvapadam Vinivrittihinam. Then you reach the eternity of Dhruvapadam. From there is no return. And that will be obtained by you in the normal course. That's how you bless Dhruva. Dhruva became pure in his mind, as all his ignorance and negative instincts were destroyed once and for all in that moment. Here the word Dhruvapadam in the sloka is split as Dhruva in vocative case and Padam the place. It can also be taken as a single word. In that case, it would mean as follows. You will attain that place superior to all others and which is being permanently circumambulated by stars, planets, and the 7 great sages, who are the 7 stars of the Great Bear. It will shine as a beacon, even when all the 3 worlds face dissolution during the Naimittika Pralaya, you will be there in eternity. This place will become famous with the name of Dhruva-loka. Enjoy eternally the nectar of divine bliss in that abode. That was your blessing. Ityuchishitvaigate nrupanandanasau Ityuchishitvaigate nrupanandanasau Anandita akila jano nagarim upetaha Anandita akila jano nagarim upetaha Reme chiram bhavadanugraha purnakamaha Tate gade chavanam adrita rajyabharaha Reme chiram bhavadanugraha purnakamaha Tate gade chavanam adrita rajyabharaha Ityuchishittvai gate nripanandana asau anandita akila jano nagarim upetaha preme chiram bhavat anugraha purna kamaha tate gate chavanam ஆத்யத ராஜ்யபாரஹா. இவ்வாறு கூறி தாங்கள் சென்ற பிறகு அந்த அரசகுமாரன் மக்கள் அனைவரையும் மகிழ்விப்பவனாக நகரத்துக்கே மறுபடியும் திரும்பி வந்து தங்கள் அருளால் ஆசைகள் அனைத்தையும் பெற்று ஒரு சாதாரண மானுடனாக உத்தானபாதனின் புதல்வனாக வந்து மகாராஜாவாக அனுபவித்து நாளடைவில் தன் தந்தை தவத்திற்கு வேண்டி வனம் சென்ற பின் ஆட்சி பொறுப்பை அவரிடமே ஏற்று வெகுகாலம் இன்புற்று வாழ்ந்தான் என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. On your disappearance, after blessing him, the prince returned to the capital city. The inhabitants, who were extremely sad when Dhruva had gone away to the forest, were overcome with happiness by his achievements much beyond his age and the greatness of his devotion to Bhagavan. Seeing Dhruva return with the Lord's blessings, his mother Suniti, who was still then drowned in the ocean of unbearable sorrow, was overwhelmed with happiness and shed tears of joy. Even his stepmother Suruchi, who behaved so cruelly towards him, and his father, who was silent witness to such behavior, were all extremely delighted. Later, King Uttanapada entrusted Dhruva with the responsibility of governance, retired to the forest as a hermit. Delighted with the fulfillment of all his aspirations by your grace, Dhruva accepted the responsibility and ruled the kingdom very zealously for a very long time. Yakshena devanihate punuruttamesmin yakshisa yuddha nirato virato manutya shantya prasanna hridayat dhanadadupeta tadbhaktimeva sudrugam avrunon mahatma tadbhaktimeva sudrugam avrunon mahatma. Yakshena devanihate punaruttamesmin yakshaihi sa yuddha nirato virato manuktya shantya prasanna hridaya dhanadadupeta tvat bhaktimeva sudrudam avrunon mahatma. ஓ தேவதேவா, ஒரு சமயம் யக்ஷன் ஒருவனால் துருவனுடைய சகோதரனான உத்தமன் கொல்லப்படவே துருவன் யக்ஷர்களை எதிர்த்து போரிடலானான். துருவன் என் தாத்தா சுவாயம்பு மனுவே நேரில் காட்சியளித்து துருவனிடம் வேண்டிக் கொண்டார். போரை கைவிடும்படி கூறியதால் துருவனும் போரை பெரியவர் சொல்லுகிறார் என்பதனால் நிறுத்தினான். துருவனை வெல்ல முடியாது என்று அறிந்த யட்சர்களும் சமாதானத்தினால் உள்ளம் மகிழ்ந்த யட்சர்களின் மன்னனான குபேரனிடம் தங்களிடம் திடமான பக்தி ஒன்றையே மகாத்மாவான அந்த துருவன் வரமாக வேண்டிக் கொண்டான் அல்லவா என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. Suruchi's son Uttama once went to the forest for hunting. There he fought with a yaksha. Yakshas are demigods. And in the battle, the yaksha killed Uttama. It was a fair fight. Uttama was less than the yaksha, so yaksha killed him. But seeking to avenge his brother's death, Dhruva declared a war on the yakshas. Dhruva killed innumerable yakshas with great ease. Then Dhruva's grandfather Swayambhu Manu intervened and advised Dhruva that it was a grievous sin to kill innocent yakshas and that such violence was not in accordance with the dignity of his race, especially for a great bhakta like Dhruva, who knew what happened and who had seen you with his own eyes. He should really understand that the death of Uttama was not preventable, as Uttama had met with his fate because of his own past deeds and the karma that his mother accumulated. Dhruva immediately became calm, took the advice and renounced his anger and enmity towards yakshas and instantly stopped the war. This immensely pleased not only the yakshas but also yakshas king Kubera. This resulted in cessation of hostilities and prevalence of peace. So Kubera, who was overwhelmed, the king of yakshas, approached Dhruva with an offer of boons, whatever Dhruva might choose. But Dhruva was such a great soul that he said he only chose to ask for steadfast and unshakable bhakti towards you, Guruvayurappa. Kubera was so pleased and said with all the power that he had, he will definitely bless Dhruva. Ante bhavat purushanita vimanayato matrasamam Dhruvapade mudito yamate matrasamam Dhruvapade mudito yamate evam svabhrutya janapalana lonaditvam vatalaya dipanirundimam Amayugan Vatalaya Divanirundimam Amayogan Vatalaya Ishvara Ante bhavati purushanita vimanayato matrasamam Dhrupade muditoyamaste evam swabhritya janapalana loladistvam vatalayadipanirindimam amayogan Shatrimshat varsha sagasram shashasakshiti mandalam bhogaihi punyakshayam kurvan abhogaihi ashubhakshayam bhogaihi punyakshayam kurvan abhogaihi ashubhakshayam Shatrimsad Varsha Sahasram Shashasa Kshiti Mandalam Bhogaihi Punyakshayam Kurvan Abhogaihi Ashubhakshayam. Dhruva Maharaja ruled over this planet for 36,000 years. He diminished the reactions of pious activities by enjoyment and by practicing austerities which he diminished inauspicious reactions. I do realize that some of you may be thinking that we are excited to hear the global news of a 108 years old woman explaining the secret of her longevity, and the world media publishes such information with remarkable curiosity. Then how come we casually mention or reconcile with numbers such as 36,000 years and not address such? Let us see what Shuka explained to Parikshit and Maitreya elaborates to Vidura. The Dhruva Maharaja ruled over the planet for 36,000 years means that he was present in the Satya Yuga, because in the Satya Yuga people used to live up to 100,000 years easily. In the next Yuga, Treta, people used to live for 10,000 years. And in the Yuga that followed, Dwapara, at least 1,000 years. Of course, in the present age, in Kali Yuga, the maximum duration of life is about 100 years. With the change of yugas, the duration of life and the memory, the quality of kindness, and all other good qualities have been diminishing so fast. There are two kinds of activities, namely pious and impious. By executing pious activities, one can gain higher faculties and facilities for higher material enjoyment. But due to impious activities, one has to undergo severe distress, not only now, but in births to come. A devotee, however, is not interested in enjoyment or affected by distress. When he is prosperous, he knows, I am diminishing the results of my pious activities. And when he is in distress, he knows, I am diminishing the reactions of my impious activities as well. In other words, a devoted bhakta doesn't care whether he has accumulated punyam by pious activities or papam by inadvertent actions. He is anyway going to diminish them by continued bhakti towards Bhagavan. A devotee is not concerned with enjoyment or distress. He simply desires to execute bhakti. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, bhakti should be apratihata, unchecked by the material conditions of happiness or distress. The devotee undergoes processes of austerity, such as observing vratams like Ekadashi and similar other fasting days, and refraining from sensuous life, intoxication, gambling, and eating dead meat, etc. This is what Bhagavatam says. Thus, he becomes purified from the reactions of his past impious life, and because he engages in devotional service, which is the most pious activity, he enjoys life without any separate or special endeavor. In the case of Dhruva, he decides to hand over the administrative duties of rulership and adjourns for greater penance. You will see more about this in the coming dashakams. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Narayana 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 Hare Krishna Guruvayurappa